G'day, guys, and welcome to a video episode of the Before We Get Started podcast. I'm excited. Today, I'm joined by Graham Hawkins, who's a globally recognized thought leader in the future of B2B sales and one of the clearest voices on how AI is reshaping the sales profession. Graham's got over 34 years leading sales teams across the Asia Pacific, Europe, and Australia for companies like Experian and BT. Graham has not only built multiple high-performance revenue engines, but he's also founded three game-changing companies: Sales Tribe, the world's first on-demand sales enablement marketplace; Grow, that's GRO3, a sales acceleration firm; and most recently, Qs.ai, which is a pioneering AI-guided micro-coaching platform, turning traditional sales training on its head. He's a LinkedIn top voice, a Crunchbase top 25 global sales influencer, a best-selling author of The Future of the Sales Profession, and now the co-author of the brand new book, Deep Selling, How to Engage Buyers and Drive Growth in the Age of AI. Graham has a very simple but bold mission, which is to humanize sales with AI, keeping humans firmly in the driver's seat while making salespeople dramatically more relevant and effective in a world where buyers now have all the power. So, Graham, welcome to the show. It's lovely to have you here.
Thanks, Simon. Great to see you, and thanks for having me.
No, a pleasure, mate. A pleasure. I know that this was it's been a little while in the making. We've had plenty of conversations where we're going, you know what, we should try and capture some of this into a podcast. And so enough from me. Before we get started into the nitty gritty, do you want to expand on the introduction I gave you and tell me a little bit more about your background and how you got here today?
Yeah, well, listen, like lots of salespeople, Simon, I'm an accidental salesperson, sort of fell into the role. As a young fella who grew up on a farm here in Victoria, I was trying to become a professional athlete playing AFL footy. That didn't work out for a number of reasons, and I found myself in a sales role, commission only, by the way, back in the day when it was, if you didn't sell, you didn't eat. So commission only in the financial services industry. And I quickly learned that, I think because of the country upbringing and the way my parents kind of taught me to behave, I quickly realized that I was pretty good at building trust. And so the sales career took off pretty well. I founded my own little company, and I was a third-party agent for another master agency. And I realized that there was some merit in this sales role. But it was totally different, as you know, Simon. We've talked about this way back then, and I'm talking 1989 when I began. So way back in the late 80s, when I was told, Graham, sales is just a numbers game. Make 100 calls, you'll get 30 interested parties. From those 30 interested parties, you'll make 10 meetings. From those 10 meetings, you'll get 3 sales. So just follow the formula.
Yeah.
And I think because I had this country work ethic, I just knuckled down and churned through the numbers, and lo and behold, the formula worked. In fact, then I started realizing maybe I can refine this formula a little bit more and make it work better for me. And so I set about trying to work out how can I get smarter at what I do. So that's how I began, and that quickly led to opportunities to move into telecommunications just as mobile phones were exploding. I had a couple of roles, Hutchison Telecoms and then British Telecom, and then I wanted to get into software because at that point in time, software was the game. So pre-Y2K, when software was exploding around the world, I managed to find myself in a role with a large US software vendor called CompuWare. And the rest is history. It's been 35 years of sales and sales leadership roles.
And you got the battle scars to prove it.
And I did have hair once too.
Hey, welcome.
Yeah, I know. Well, so what is it about these roles? Is it the sales and marketing, or is it the entrepreneur that makes you lose your hair?
Lose your hair, I know, right? It seems all the CEOs seem to manage to, CEOs of the big companies manage to keep their hair. But us lowly sales and marketing guys tend to lose it. Tell me.
Well, there's a lot of stress associated with a long-term sales and marketing career. I mean, I've always laughed about that, hero to zero. At the end of the month, you're a hero, you've made your quota, and then back to zero, right?
Yeah.
And so there's this constant sort of monthly, it never lets up. You never really get out in front of it. You're always under the pump, and then targets always go up anyway. So yeah, it can be a tiring and stressful career
Sure.
if you don't learn how to manage your energy.
Yeah, like anything, there's a system. Like anything that works well, there is a system and there is a process. Yeah. And as you rightly said, that 35 years ago, the system was make as many calls as you can because you could reach people on a landline or even on their mobile phones, as we were talking before we started the show. Now, the iPhone recently, the recent iOS release is now answering your phone for unknown numbers and querying the caller for the reason for their call. So the traditional way of cold calling as we know it, which was already a very exhausting and complicated sales process, has now got doubly as hard. What was what do you think back then when you said that you sort of looked at the numbers game? What were sort of the first things that you started to identify in terms of how you could improve the sales process back then? And then maybe we can look at how that has evolved over the last 35 years to bring us up to today's situation.
Yeah, look, that's a great question. I could talk about that for a long time. But, the very first thing that I realized, and this is straight to the marketing point, is targeting. Who am I trying to talk to? Before I go out and ring 100 numbers or make 100 calls and have those 100 conversations that ultimately leads to 3 sales, how about I just get smarter about who those people are and make sure I'm working with what we now call ideal customer profiles.
Yes.
So, targeting, segmenting the market, looking at being a little bit more intelligent, getting access to information that might mean that you're not just doing spray and pray type engagement or activities. You're a lot more refined. Someone said to me early in my career, don't use the scattergun approach, use the rifle, laser focused, all of those kind of things. So I learned there were lots of ways that I could refine what I was doing and be smarter about it.
No, and look, straight to that point. As an agency, where we've been helping businesses obviously generate more leads and make more sales, mostly in the sort of professional services area. First 5 years, it was pretty straightforward. You could go up, put ads up on Facebook. You could do a fair amount of targeting. Same thing with Google or Instagram or whatever platform it was. But then we realized that we really had to get down to the psychographics of our audience, not just the demographics, not just 50-year-old male that lives in so-and-so that drives a Mercedes or BMW or Toyota or something, but really getting down to understanding the pain points and how we can solve those. So you're having an informed conversation, even if our version is digital rather than human to human.
Yeah.
And when you talk about targeting, how have you then, I guess, seen that evolve? You started out in software sales, then obviously you were doing work with BT Music in the UK in the early 2000s. Perhaps let's talk a little bit about that, because those would have been heady days. I would have thought sort of the first time that music was starting to stream. You'd come out of what was the pirate download platform? Napster.
Napster. I think. Yeah. That was all happening right at that same time when I was in that role. Yeah, it was a hedonistic time for sure, and a really interesting time because, as you say, digital music was exploding. You had these big labels and independent labels that had controlled the music industry for all those years, and they were ignoring digital, and much to their own demise in a way, because when iTunes Music Store launched in 2003. It changed the game. It was totally disruptive. So, yeah, I was right place, right time in London, working with one of the biggest telcos in the world and, talking to a lot of the major labels and some of the big artists. We signed Robbie Williams, which was amazing. So, a lot started to change there. It all started to become, this digital thing started to become real. We were talking about new media and digital transformation. And so 22 years ago now. It's
Yeah.
a lot's happened since.
Yeah. And in terms of that then obviously you had your time in London. What took place after BT, and what was that sort of transition like for you?
What took place is 4 kids, and and the need to come back home to Australia and be around family. So yeah, my wife Rachel and I had our kids and came home, and so we based ourselves back here in Melbourne and got on with a couple of other different roles with software companies. So back in the
Yeah.
software game and now in leadership roles and leveraging what I'd learned during the 4 years in London. And really trying to improve and create high performance sales teams in the businesses
Yeah.
that I was running at that point.
Yeah.
So yeah, it started to evolve pretty damn quickly. One of the things that I realized, Simon, is that a lot of what I was taught and had learned about sales, what I call interruptive push selling,
Yeah.
the old numbers game thing, that was all starting to change. And I'm like, what? Why are my old models not working the way they used to? And you didn't have to be Einstein to work out that was due to the fact that we now have exploding information in the hands of the buyer.
Mm. Mm.
So back when I started first, I like to tell the story. Back when I first started selling, we had information asymmetry.
Yeah.
The vendors had the information, the buyers had none.
Yeah.
Of course, the internet explodes, more and more information available. Now buyers have got access to things they can self-serve, they can solve their own problems. So a lot of my old, I'm embarrassed to say it now, but a lot of the old sales techniques that we were all taught, they just weren't working the way they used to, because now we've got an educated buyer who has got access to information.
Mm. Across all vendors.
Across all vendors, across all aspects of life. And this was just the beginning, right? It was just the beginning of how things were starting to change. So in 2012, fast forward a few years now, but in 2012, I thought, I'm going to get off the corporate treadmill for a year.
Yeah.
Went back to uni, decided I would study buyer behavior because I could see the role of the salesperson in the future just evolving dramatically or changing. I wasn't really sure where it was going. So I spent 12 months doing this research. I went around Australia interviewing all sorts of buyers, procurement leaders, vendor management type people, and trying to get a sense of what they were looking for and what they expected when they were engaging with a supplier. Absolutely, totally changed my view on my role and the future of the sales profession. And in fact, that's how this book was written. So that was my first book.
Awesome.
All of the research from that MBA program that I did is in here. This research, Simon, got me on a totally different track, if you like. I started to realize, wow, things are changing rapidly with all of this tech enablement and digital everything.
Yeah.
And so I decided I'd launch a business. That's when Sales Tribe was born, to try and help companies understand what all of this change means.
Yes.
I certainly didn't write about AI in this. This was 2017.
Yeah.
I couldn't have imagined that we'd be where we are today with AI exploding. So hence the reason for writing a second book called Keep Selling. So
Great book. Great book.
In a fairly short space of time, you and I have both seen sales and marketing change dramatically, haven't we?
Yeah, 100%. 100%. I mean, I can't believe it. Literally is only a week ago that we hit the 3rd year mark for ChatGPT. It's only been 3 years, and yet, I think there was an outage not so long ago, and X and LinkedIn was blowing up. Everybody was up in arms because they're going, oh my God, I can't do any work. It's amazing how quickly it has become embedded as part of our everyday, day-to-day process, and now is moving beyond just this sort of chat bot interface where can answer a question for you, or maybe write you an email or some content, but now where it's becoming fully agentic. So it's now starting to go out and it's now starting to do things by itself on our behalf. So that's, I think, one of the most interesting things that I want to really dive deep into in this part is, from a marketing perspective, obviously we're out there building awareness and getting brand awareness out there and educating the buyer so that when they are ready to make a purchase, our brand or the brand is front of mind, whatever that brand or product is. How does that, in your eyes, dovetail into the sales methodology, and in particularly what you've been talking about in the book as well?
Yeah, look, we'd need 3 days, I think, to cover that topic. There's so much going on, right? And I love the topic because it's revolutionary. I don't even think we all realize what's about to happen next. So from a salesperson's point of view, though, the big thing, and you touched on it earlier, I could pick up the phone in the old days, ring somebody and get through to them and politely ask if they've got a few minutes, can I have a chat? And normally they would. So for me, every salesperson on the planet, 15 million B2B salespeople around the world, the number one challenge we've all got is how do I get the attention of and start a conversation with an educated buyer who no longer wants to meet me in person? If you look at the latest research from people like Gartner, they said 44% of B2B buyers would prefer to have a seller-free experience. 44% would prefer not to speak to a salesperson. And that's going to increase, obviously, as the millennials and the Gen Ys and Gen Zs come through, because they're all about just, self-serve, and I don't want to talk to anybody.
100%. I think I've told you this before. I've got a 27-year-old son and a 9-year-old daughter. And for the last 7 or 8 years, in trying to get in touch with my son, I'll call him and I'll get a text message back instantly saying, "Hey, Dad, what's up?" And it's like, "What's up?" is I want to speak to you, is what's up. This generation would much prefer, just no text message, instant message, messenger, you name it, anything where they don't actually have to interact with the human.
I'm laughing, mate, because my kids are the same. I've got 4 and they're all the same. They'll sit around the dinner table, texting each other. And anyway, back to the point. The point here is access to the buyer was, relatively straightforward. I knew where they were and I'd just go out and interrupt them, basically. Now, of course, they're blocking, and there's all sorts of legislation, privacy and anti-spam and all this sort of stuff that stops me as a sales and marketing person from actually engaging with them. And now when you look at what's happening with buyer intent, buyer sentiment and triggers and all of that stuff that we can listen for and information that we can gather. Simon, I've spent most of my career chasing what I call low or no intent buyers.
Really?
Yeah, well, absolutely. Graham, here's your territory, mate. Off you go. Go and make calls, make your calls, or go out and knock on doors in the old school sort of, interruptive push or brute force sales. Yes. And that was all about just, spray and pray.
Yeah, building trust, building some rapport.
Well, assuming I can get a conversation started. And now, of course, the buyer doesn't need me to show up and say, "Hey, Simon, do you know you've got a problem? Hey, Simon, there's a better way to do something." Like, the buyer is educated. They've got access to information. They don't need some sales guy interrupting their busy day.
Yes. Yeah. And we're all time poor, and we're all bombarded with notifications, and it's just another notification.
It really is. So I think to your question, where is the big thing right now with AI? The big thing for me is understanding who is my buyer. Like, a number of people talk about this idea that it's never been easier to get information about the buyer, but it's never been more difficult to actually engage with them.
Yeah.
So how do I start a conversation? That is the number one challenge that every salesperson has. Getting a conversation underway.
Yeah.
It's a real challenge. So, it used to be just fill the top of the funnel, Graham, 3 to 5 times quota in the top of the funnel, have a lot of leads in the top, push it all down, and something magically falls out the bottom. That's not the case anymore. Now I have to be thinking about the sort of the flipped funnel, is narrow the focus, land and expand through the funnel, nurture and grow relationships over time. Yes. Very different mindset, very different skill set, very different tool set.
Yeah. And trying to get founders, CEOs, CFOs, anybody who's a decision maker who's saying, okay, looking at 2026, going, okay, well, our plan for 2025, calendar 2025, was to increase sales by 25, 30%, and we've landed at 2%. So how are we going to solve this in the next 12 months?
Yeah.
And I'm on the as a marketer, as a digital marketer, I'm always on the platforms. I'm always scrolling through, seeing what's. It's a noisy place. So to your point about trying to attention and getting that cut through, getting that basically getting people's attention, stopping the thumb, as we say on the scroll.
Yeah.
I know how we do it from a marketing perspective, but then when we're talking about engaging with the buyer, things like lead magnets were very successful for a while. Previous to that, it was white papers. What are you seeing, from the front end of sales in the companies that you're talking to and consulting to, where the winners, I guess, are taking a different approach? But two points to this question. And are they also looking, do you think that they are more aware of the changes that are coming, that are being brought about by artificial intelligence?
I absolutely think so. When you look at the hyper-growth companies, and Simon, I'm fortunate in my role at Grow to go around working with lots of different companies in different industries. And there is no doubt that the hyper-growth companies are acutely aware that this idea of, putting up a billboard or an ad and doing spray and pray marketing, those days are finished. Now I have to be clear about what does an ideal customer look like? And then what are the lookalike accounts or target customers that I can be going after? And being prepared to then play the long game, the nurture and grow approach, planting seeds, watering the seeds a little bit, allowing the seeds to germinate and grow, fertilizing the seeds, and then, taking this long-term view about value creation. I think most of those hyper-growth companies are looking at, how do we do all of that in the right way? They are very clear about intent. Is this buyer in a buying window? Have they moved into an awareness stage? And if so, how do I move them on the journey? How do I get their attention, create visibility, and then open with a narrative that I can carry forward? That's what most sales organizations are struggling with.
And so hypergrowth companies, how do we are those companies doing that sort of work internally, do you think, to sort of understand the market? Are they bringing in people with greater expertise like yourself? If I'm sitting here listening to this as a founder or CEO or CFO perhaps of a $50 million business that's looking to scale next year, the last couple of years, certainly the Australian economy has been fairly lackluster, for want of a better word, I think, in terms of growth. What would be your advice? What would be the approach that you would be advising these companies on to take? We've talked about, finding your ICP, getting your messaging clear. Obviously, we talked before we got started about brand and the importance of brand.
Yeah.
Maybe let's start there. Let's look at the brand piece and work back for the listeners as to why that's so critical these days.
Oh my goodness, it's so critical. Look, I have a slide, Simon. I think you've seen it, where I often show senior leaders a typical buyer's journey now, and it's a journey mapping kind of slide, and it just shows the various stages the buyer goes through when they're researching products and selecting vendors, or identifying and trying to select vendors. And the main point of the entire slide, and it builds as I go through, here are the steps that the buyer's going through on their way to, becoming hopefully a raving fan of your client or your customer. And the key message is that if you're not visible now at the beginning of the buying journey, in other words, if you haven't got any mind share at all, you don't exist. And so what's happening with a lot of companies is that the salespeople are coming into an opportunity when the buyer's down funnel. They're already at the purchase stage. They've done their research. They've gone to Perplexity and GPT and Grok, and they've got the recommendations from other people and other places,
Yes.
They've already selected their preferred vendor. Your sales guy is showing up at the 11th hour and being told, hey, Simon, we want one of these in this color and this blood, give us your best price.
Yes.
And salesperson, being the sort of the eternal optimist, wishful thinker, runs back to the office and says, oh, we've got a really good opportunity here. I'm going to forecast this one. They want to buy next week.
Yeah.
And so lots of these companies, Simon, have terrific forecasts that, the top of the funnel looks great, but conversion ratio is way down low, like lowest I've ever seen.
Is that right?
Oh, without a doubt. Look, a good conversion ratio for a salesperson in B2B is anywhere between 15 and 30%.
Mm.
I'm seeing companies now that have 10 and 5% conversion ratios.
Wow. That's a
And
lot of overhead to carry.
oh my goodness, the amount of wasted time and effort and resources thrown at opportunities that they should never have been competing in. Tender responses. Oh my God. I mean, I think that's why I've got no hair. Seriously, when you look at the amount of company resource that is just absolutely wasted, shareholder value wasted.
Yes.
Because some sales leader says, yes, let's bid. Let's throw a whole heap of time and resource at this big tender that we're going to win. You were never going to win it if you weren't shaping it from the outset. Like we all know that old thing.
Yeah.
So I think to your point, brand and visibility and being known in the market for what you do, absolutely critical now.
Yeah. Yeah, and 100%, and that's where we start, with this sort of ABC process: understanding your audience, understanding your business, and understanding the competition. Not to copy the competition, but to see who's who in the zoo and what's the competition saying. How are they standing out? Because we don't want to make your business, your brand, your service, etc., the same as anybody else's. To your point, you have to be able to stand out. You have to be able to get some cut through. And I think that's where we find when businesses approach us and they go, oh, hi, look, we're looking for a new agency, or we're looking for an agency to take over our growth, to take over our marketing. And we go, great. Have you got, do you understand your audience? What is your USP? What is it that really is your lift, your grandma or, your mum proposition, where you can sum it up and tell your mum what you do or your grandma what you do, so you understand it, or they understand it very clearly. And so when we go through the steps to run a digital marketing campaign, which used to be very simple, put a Google Ads campaign out there, drive traffic, same as the old numbers game, 2 to 3% conversion. But now everybody's educated, everybody knows who they want to, or who's on their radar, which probably brings me to the biggest change that we're seeing, certainly in this last quarter of this year, which is the whole GEO, AEO being found within the LLMs, within the Groks and the ChatGPTs or the Claudes or the Perplexities, because they are recommending brands, and it might not be your brand. Just because I put a video out the other week, just because you're number one on Google doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be number 1, 2, or 3 in ChatGPT.
Yeah. Well, I was at Inbound a few months back in San Francisco, and Yamini Rangan stood up first opening keynote and said, Google search is dead. It's broken. 60% of Google searches end in 0 clicks thanks to AI overview. So you're right. This is an important topic. Before we get into this, because this is a really interesting change that's happened, right? This GEO, SEO to GEO thing. I want to go back to your earlier point briefly. Talking about understanding your market and your buyer and even the competition. I'm now saying to senior leaders, sales leaders and company owners, forget the competition. Right, you're falling at the first hurdle. Don't even worry about the competition for now. Get your own shop in order, if you know what I mean. So when I say that, a lot of salespeople are unable to clearly articulate in 30 seconds that high impact grabber statement, or what used to be called the value prop or the elevator speech. Lots of salespeople are falling at the first hurdle. They're not researched and haven't done their homework before they show up. So we've got a program called Mastering the Initial Engagement. And, when you think about one shot to make a first impression, Simon, and you show up and you're sounding like you haven't really done the homework needed to understand me and my business. Buyers are looking for two things. They're looking for empathy and authority.
Yes.
Does this guy understand me or girl
Yeah.
understand me?
Yeah.
Are they an authority in their industry? That needs to be communicated very, very quickly now.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I tend to say, I'm a little bit biased with this, but I tend to say, forget about the competition. Let's just get our own house in order
Yes.
and get some of these fundamentals in place, because you can't build any sort of scale on an unsolid foundation, if you know what I mean.
Correct. Like anything, and again, people come to us, businesses, owners, founders, marketers come to us and they say, can you run a campaign for us? Oh, I've just spoken to somebody, they can get started next week. And we're like, how do they know your business? How can somebody take your money, give it to Google or Facebook or LinkedIn or whoever it is, or take it themselves and spend it and give you a strategy based off maybe 2 phone calls?
Yeah.
This is like a really important message for business owners. Anybody that's watching or listening, is that when it comes to marketing and sales, it's education these days. As you say, it's about being there consistently, having that strong brand presence. And the brand isn't just a logo. I think a lot of businesses just think, oh yeah, no, we've got a logo and we've got a slogan, but that's not your brand.
No.
It's everything throughout the business. It's how everybody turns up. It's having, as Simon Sinek famously said, that why, start with why.
Yeah.
I have to challenge that a little bit, because I don't know that I bought something from somebody based off their why recently. But I think it is very important to be able to communicate a single why you're in business, what you're doing for the client, and why they should choose you. And so brand is how you're seen, not just it's how you're showing up. It's all of the communication pieces, from the minute somebody engages, picked up, leaving a message on the phone, signing up on a form, getting an autoresponder to say, hey, we've received your inquiry. Somebody's going to be in touch within X, I was going to say X hours, but it used to be 2 hours. Yeah. Now it's, I think 6 minutes is if you haven't got in touch with somebody within 6 minutes, you could almost guarantee that your competitor has. And I think you might be able to talk to some stats here, but the first mover advantage, having that first conversation, gives you almost an infinitely higher chance of closing a sale. Is that the case?
I think that's probably fair. I tend to look at everything through the lens of the salesperson. And honestly, in that, if you think about that buying scenario, buyers identified a real problem that they need to solve. They know they've got to change. Yeah. And they invite three vendors in to pitch. I can tell you now, it doesn't matter if I've turned up 24 hours later. If I show up and I'm fully researched, I understand your industry, I understand your customers, I understand your competitors. I've done all of that research, which I can gather now from all sorts of places.
Yeah.
And I show up informed with the right message and the right story to tell.
Yes.
And I can demonstrate very, very quickly that I understand you and I'm an authority in my space. I'll win every time.
Yeah.
Because the vast majority of salespeople are not doing that. They're falling at the first hurdle. So yeah, it's a really interesting scenario. Yes, being quick and responsive is all important, but you think about the trust equation.
Yeah.
How trust is developed. You know, Simon, back in the day, go back to the old days again, I used to spend a large portion of the sales cycle developing trust and rapport because there was no other way for the buyer to get that trust and rapport but to spend time with me.
I like Graham. I'm buying from Graham.
Yeah.
He's got what I need. He's a nice guy. Yeah.
That's all totally shifted. Yeah. Now you can jump on Grok and you can pull up a detailed dossier or a search on and report on me and my company.
Yeah.
And you can
past your experience.
Yeah, and any bad reviews that I may have, or anyone who said that I haven't delivered or whatever, you can find all of that now.
Yeah. And so I was talking to somebody just last week, and they were talking about the different styles of selling. And there was this sort of the rapport builder, and then the challenger. The rapport builder being someone like myself who gets on really well with people, builds that rapport, builds that trust, but doesn't necessarily go in for the hard close. Then you've got the challenger who just comes in. They're perhaps a little bit more transactional. Who's winning? What's the winning sales style at the moment?
The person who's winning is the most adaptive person. I was told week 1, 1989, and I hadn't heard this term before, but I was told about mirror and match. You sit down with someone who's a director or who's an autocratic type person. You've got to match that person. So I was taught way back in the beginning that as a salesperson, I need to be a bit of a chameleon in a way. And, that didn't sit well with me all the time, but there's a certain amount of that's true.
Yeah.
So, there are different types of buyers, different personalities, different profiles, different whole range of different things you've got to be aware of. But the salesperson that's most successful now is the one who can adapt to the person that's in front of them. So whether it's the challenger, whether it's the people pleaser, there's all sorts of different types of selling and different methodologies. But at the end of the day, Simon, it comes back to trust. Does this person understand me? Empathy and authority. Do I trust that this person can deliver? And more importantly, can his company, if he decides to walk out the door, because the average tenure of a B2B salesperson now is 16.8 months, if that person moves on, who's taking his place or her place? And will their company honour the contract we've just signed? Will they be able to deliver?
Yeah, we touched on this last time we spoke, actually. That was a bit of a wow sort of moment for me, 16.8 months. And when we were doing the math, because when you're looking at sales cycles that could be 12, 18 months to 2 years, so you're building your book, so to speak, and you're building your pipeline, but your tenure, if you're out the door within 16 months, all of that work that you're doing never actually lands in a lot of cases.
It's one of the biggest scourges right now on business in general, that we have this acceptance that sales staff attrition should be 30%, double that of every other job function. So we turn over twice as many salespeople as we do any other function.
Why is that?
Well, a range of reasons. It's notoriously difficult as a job, and so there's a certain amount of attrition that happens naturally. But I think it comes down to most organisations are just not set up to onboard and manage salespeople the right way. Let's zoom out here a little bit and talk about something that needs to be talked about. The way that we measure, manage, and reward salespeople is still in the dark ages. It's still, quota commission territory, which we were doing 130 years ago. I went right back over the history of sales in my first book. Way back in the 1880s, we had quotas and commissions and territories. And still to this day, we're driving salespeople on the wrong measurements. As a business leader, I'm all about trying to create customer centricity, and yet I reward individual effort. We're all about, delivering lifetime customer value, but it's end of month, end of quarter madness. Bring that deal forward, hurry, quicker, faster.
Yes.
So with all of that in mind, the sales role is inherently difficult, and it does churn through people pretty quickly. It burns people out pretty quickly as well. We've got to start to think more about how we develop salespeople and how we measure and manage them, because just chasing a binary end of month quota, did you make your number, did you not make your number, okay, you're a failure, out you go, that old mindset, that's finished. And little wonder, I should say, younger generations don't want to go into that kind of role.
True. That's a whole other conversation. In terms of anxiety and the anxious generation, but sticking more to that is an interesting segue, because I do want to talk about what does the future look like. We've both got, your youngest is 11, my youngest is 9. I've got the older boy as well, who's well on his way. But obviously, AI, you've got a platform around AI. You've written a book now, Deep Selling in the Age of AI. So we're very much talking around this change that we've seen in literally just on 3 years. We're recording on December the 1st, 2025. ChatGPT rolled over its 3rd year anniversary, I think the 22nd of November or something similar. And during that time, obviously, there's a lot of discussion on the internet. Stephen Bartlett just had, I can't remember his name, but just did a very interesting, you might have seen or heard about it, very interesting talk with the guy that did The Social Dilemma a few years ago. And he's talking about the fact that whilst the Silicon Valley leaders, sort of the 6 to 8 leaders of the big FANG companies in Silicon Valley are saying one thing, that we're moving into this nirvana and this new golden age of AI. But ultimately, it's about global domination. Whoever wins the AI race, so to speak, wins power over everything. If you think about how much and what we're using this new tool for, and how much information we're giving it. So, what do we think the future, the next 5-10 years, education, tertiary education, uni degrees, all of those kids now, young graduates coming out into the workforce just this year looking for their first entry role, that is now being done by AI?
Yeah, well, I certainly don't profess to be any kind of, I don't have the crystal ball on any of this stuff. I don't think anyone really does. We're all guessing how it's going to unfold. One thing I do know, though, is that it's unfolding fast, like faster than that sort of accelerated growth curve that we're seeing. But yeah, as a concerned father of 4 kids, you think about my oldest is 18 and, got into psychology recently and was going to go off and study, and she decided to have a gap year. But then you think, well, where are the roles for the kids in the future? And will the traditional approach to education even matter anymore? Like, everyone's talking about unis and, the role that the university plays now in someone's career. So, yeah, that whole model is changing, isn't it? Educate your kids, put them into a profession, and they stay in that profession, they have a secure job.
Yeah.
When I wrote this book, Simon, one of the books that kind of absolutely floored me was a book by Martin Ferguson called The Rise of the Robots. And it was the first time I'd read, this is going back 2015, I think,
Right.
10 years ago.
Yeah.
Martin Ferguson was talking then about the idea of universal base income, where, in the future, the robots and the AI will be doing the work, and we'll all be, getting a pension or an income from the government.
Yes.
Based on how much we contribute to the machine.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's definitely going in that direction, isn't it?
Well, it is. It is. I mean, I've been following the robot story as well for probably about 2 or 3 years. I think in terms of the humanoid robots, obviously, well, Boston Dynamics have been around for probably 15, almost at least 15 or so years, because I remember watching some of the videos with my son. But now you've got obviously Tesla coming out with their Optimus. When I was in the States earlier this year, in the middle of the year, they had their Optimus in a couple of the Tesla showrooms, just getting people accustomed to the fact that the robots are coming. Elon's talking about having, I think, 10,000 of these built in the next 12 months, moving up to 100,000, moving up to 1 million, and the robots then building themselves. You've got companies like NIO, the Chinese obviously are very hot on this. So we are the 2030s, definitely we will be seeing robots, I believe, within the household. It's going to be one of the biggest consumer products.
Yeah. And
again, I was talking to somebody the other day and saying, maybe we just need all of our kids to train up to be tradies and, for manual work, because the knowledge work is going to be done at some stage in the next 10 years. A lot of it is simply going to be done by the AI. So then you go, okay, well, let's go back to manual labor. But then, hang on a minute. No, the robots are coming, and they're going to be actually making the bricks to build the house on site.
Well, yeah, 3D printing a house now, like,
Yeah. Yeah.
this is where it's all going. I want to, if you don't mind, I want to come back to something we started to talk about, but sort of digressed, thanks to me. You mentioned about AEO or GEO,
Yeah.
and when it comes to sales and marketing, mate, everybody is asking me, Graham, so how do we make sure we're showing up in these large language models?
Yes.
And when it comes to getting a conversation started with an educated buyer who no longer wants to meet me in person, the shift from SEO to GEO, people are saying, so where do I start?
Yeah.
And I was kind of hoping, I'm going to reverse this interview, mate. I'm going to ask you a question. You're the expert in SEO and all things marketing. How does a business look at their content strategy
Yeah.
and then parlay that strategy over to the Groks and the Geminis and the Perplexity and these, to make sure that if I do a search on marketing agencies in Sydney,
Yes.
how do you make sure that your business, Sydney Digital Marketing, shows up?
Yeah. No, great question. Happy to, without diving too technically. So SEO is still, we were talking about the foundations of the house before. SEO is still very much the foundation. It's the technical foundation to ensure that your website loads quickly, that your naming conventions, that the information architecture of your website is still following best practice. So the website is still very critical because the LLMs still have to get the information from somewhere. They're not just making it up. I think contrary to popular belief, the LLMs, they're a token machine and they just put one word after the other. They've combed the entire internet. Sometimes they do have that knowledge on board when you're typing in your prompt, but other times they've got to go out to the net to go and look for it.
Yeah.
And so what they're looking for is they are looking for not only the information, but they're also looking for third-party citations. So that's where reviews, Wikipedia, Reddit, all of those sort of third-party citation websites come into play. And what you can say, Australia's most trusted digital marketing agency, and the LLM will look at that when you're typing in who is Australia's most trusted digital marketing agency, and they go, oh, well, Sydney Digital Marketing say that they are, but let's verify that claim. And then they will go out and see how many third-party sites or people can verify that claim for you. If they can, you will get cited. You will turn up in the LLM. So just because you're number one on Google because you've done all the right things from an SEO perspective doesn't necessarily mean you're going to show up number one on the LLMs.
Yeah.
And so to ensure that you do, there's a number of tools now. We've actually, when I was in the UK at a conference end of October, I met with a US company who are building a platform that will do an audit on your site and will say, okay, right, these are the terms that these are the prompts that are being typed in. This is how you would show up. Yeah. You are showing up, you're not showing up, or if you're not showing up, these are the actions that you need to take in order to show up.
Yeah.
The LLMs at the moment, for some reason, they love a list. So if you can have a list of things on your comparative table or something, they're like lists and tables. But they also like recency. So they're only looking back at sort of 2025, 2024.
Yeah.
So,
rightly so.
Yeah.
Rightly so.
Yeah. Yeah. Actionable insight here is to look at your content, obviously approach somebody like us who can guide you and sort of do a bit of a technical audit on your site. But there is a way to do this. It's a new part of the digital marketing ecosystem. As you said, it's GEO. Some people are calling it AEO. My takeaway from the Brighton SEO conference recently was that GEO was going to be the term to land on. But interestingly, what we're also seeing is that the conversion rate, if we bring it back to sales, the conversion to inquiry from a bit of traffic that's come through an LLM, and you can go into your Google Analytics or your Google Search Console, and you can see how much traffic ChatGPT is sending you, or Grok or Perplexity. And everybody's, from what we're seeing on our clients, it's doubling sort of every quarter. It's still small amounts, but it's doubling. Mm-hmm. And so you can the conversion rate that we're seeing, if somebody's come from ChatGPT, for instance, and you're getting a 2 to 3% conversion to inquiry on your website at the moment, we're seeing 10, 12, 15% conversion from that click, because they trust the AI.
Yeah, is it the trust of the AI, or is it the intent? They are a buyer that is now actively or proactively researching on these Gen AI platforms. Therefore, they have clearly moved into that, what I call the window of the window of discontent. They now are showing real intent.
Yeah. I think it's, if you think about your conversations with ChatGPT, it's exactly that. It's more of a conversation. You talked earlier about the zero-click environment, and that's going to become more apparent over the next 12 months, because Google recently launched their AI mode search, which at the moment is still an option. At the moment, we're getting AI overviews. We see at the top of our search, this is an AI overview. But AI mode is literally more like just ChatGPT. It's that chat interface that we're used to. And from what I can gather in coming off this conference, where it's 2 days of, it should have been called Brighton AI rather than Brighton SEO. But in 2 days of that, and we've seen this certainly I have, from what I'm finding firsthand, but also reading on LinkedIn, Google have just suddenly come out with Gemini 3.0, which is a real threat to the dominance of ChatGPT. Yeah. And I think that, where that leads, you remember the browser wars back in the day, the internet, we had Netscape and we had Internet Explorer, and Internet Explorer won out because they had the distribution.
Yeah.
And then obviously Chrome, Google came through with Chrome, et cetera, and that sort of flipped again. But this is the thing I think with Google, is they've got the distribution. They've got 2.5 billion users across Gmail, Android, Google Docs, Google Drive, Chrome. They've got the distribution there. Yeah. OpenAI with ChatGPT, they're still getting funding. A lot of people don't realize that, the leadership there is a little bit on the nose. We talked about empathy and trust and authority before. Can we trust the leadership at OpenAI to do no evil?
Yeah.
So yeah, for again, GEO, it's definitely an important component about being found. And being relevant over the next 12 months.
It's again, looking at it from the sales lens, it's really fascinating for me to see how much the role of the sales and marketing person are coming together, right? Like, once upon a time, the salesperson was never expected to be a content creator or to be thinking about content and creating visibility on these platforms. But now that's the reality. Yeah. So, yeah, to your point, I think for salespeople, you have to implicitly understand the problems that you're solving and how your buyers are interacting with these new platforms. What questions are they asking? What prompts are they using?
That's right.
And now, how do I make sure that my content is showing up in that way?
That's right. Answering those questions. So really, again, making sure back to, Simon, what can you recommend? FAQs on your site. You need to think. Put yourself in the customer's shoes, back to customer centricity. So none of this, the fundamentals haven't really changed. It's just the access to the information. It's, the buyer hasn't changed, but the buyer's journey, and the buyer's journey has changed, and it's so fragmented now. We talk in terms of the sales funnel, and we talk in terms of the customer journey. None of it's linear anymore.
No.
Back to your original point that you said, it was a numbers game. It's no longer. It it still is a numbers game, but it's different. It's very, very different.
I keep selling, mate. We all have to learn how to sell smarter in a world of smarter buyers. The buyer has been elevated dramatically in terms of the information they've got access to, and yet lots of sales organizations are still doing what they were doing 5 years ago, 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Some are still doing what I used to do 15, 20 years ago. Like, so yeah, there's a lot of lethargy and procrastination in the sales department for some reason. I don't understand it, but.
And do you see that? I'm gonna hone in more locally now as well. What can Australia learn from what's going on overseas? We touched on this a little while ago, and obviously our fondness for working in London. When when we had our time there, and I remember when I was similar sort of time to you, the early 2000s. I had the internet kiosk business that I'd taken over there, and I felt that the UK was quite behind in terms of its sort of technology adoption. I felt that Australia was quite ahead of its time back then. Fast forward to the last couple of years, what are you seeing sort of overseas? As you said, you were at the HubSpot event on the West Coast not so long ago.
Yeah.
What do you bring back and sort of shake your head at and go, oh, Australia, what
Yeah.
What could we do better?
Great question. Look, I go back to mid-90s when I first started working with a US software company, CompuWare, back in the day. Australia was regarded as a wonderfully innovative country, very, forward-thinking people. And for that reason, we were often regarded as a great test market. So US companies would launch products and they would bring them down to Australia to do test marketing.
Yeah.
So yeah, back then I think we were known as very forward thinking and quite open to taking risks and doing things differently.
Yeah.
And I think gradually that's changed. I think gradually we've been left behind as globalization has brought down the barriers and the borders in lots of ways. The market's become a much more globalized market now, and our little role in it has changed. And I think Aussie companies are now quite reserved and quite cautious. So I'm not seeing the sort of innovation that we were known for 20 years ago. I'm not seeing that as much now. I mean, there's still a lot of really smart, innovative startups springing up here in Australia. But yeah, when I look at what's happening in the UK and particularly North America, of course, and other places like Israel, the startup nation, what a country.
Yeah.
Like to think 7 or 9 million people or whatever it is, and the amount of incredible tech that's coming out of Israel. So yeah, I think Australia's being left behind, mate. We need to get on our bike and speed things up a bit, I think.
I agree, mate. I agree. I really do. I think, as you said, there's lots of smart people, ambitious people here. But yeah, it just seems that we are starting to
fall behind.
Just fall behind. Yeah. Mate, in wrapping up, I think we've sort of touched on as much as we sort of set out to do. We talked about the fact that sales and marketing now need to work even closer than ever. That sales and marketing, or marketing especially, needs to have a seat at the table because we're in a world where the buyer has all of the power. They've got access to all of the information. Therefore, we need to make sure that whatever digital information we're putting out there is obviously current and is talking to the buyer's challenges. I've written a couple of other things down here. We've talked about adaptability. You said that that the salespeople that are winning these days are people that can adapt obviously not only to the style of the person, the buyer, but also the method. Some people like to talk on the phone. Some people like to meet in person. Some people like to meet over Zoom. It's becoming more and more sort of fragmented, complicated. But ultimately, we talked about, I think, that the two things that matter, which is that trust. Can I trust this person, which has always been the salesperson's biggest challenge. And do they have the authority? Do they have the authority and the the ability to deliver
Yeah.
at the same time.
You mentioned before the buyer hasn't changed much, really. I mean, we're all using different tools and platforms and channels now, but fundamentally, we're still, as humans, we're still geared the same way. And, I go back to the trust equation. Every salesperson is trying to become the trusted advisor. Well, how do you do that now, given the current climate that we're working in? So, yeah, it's very different. But just I think the main message I like to leave with sales teams is empathy and authority. How do you demonstrate those two things really quickly? I wrote about it in my first book. The buyer now expects that you're a deep domain expert in your field. You have to become a specialist. And so for companies out there thinking about, why are my sales lagging? Why are my sales not growing at the rate that they should be? Well, my question to you is, what are you doing to develop your salespeople into deep domain experts?
Great.
It's all very well giving them training on, a particular sales methodology, MedPick or Challenger or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But how are they being seen by the buyer as deep domain experts or specialists in what they do? Because that's what your buyer is going to value.
Absolutely. Because that in itself it deepens that layer of trust. You can have that rapport there. You get along okay, but does this person really know what they're speaking about, and are they answering all of my questions and reservations and things in order to help me make that final decision?
Yeah, and can that salesperson take us on the long-term journey? Like, buyers are not looking for a one-night stand; they're looking for a long-term partnership.
Yes.
So, is this guy, this Simon Gould fella, is he the guy that can continually add value to what we're doing, anticipating our future needs as well as our current needs?
Yes, that's a great point as well.
Yeah.
That's a really good one. Graham Hawkins, thank you very much for coming on the show. Where should people get in touch with you? Obviously on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
It's Graham Hawkins, GrahamHawkins.
That's correct. Yep. You'll find me on LinkedIn. I spend most of my time communicating on that platform still, although it seems to be having some changes, going through some changes. LinkedIn, we didn't talk about that, but we'll park that one for another discussion. Yeah.
Well, I mean, look, we could have dived deep on the LinkedIn one. Maybe we will pull that apart. Maybe in the new year we could have another chat and get people set up for some future predictions or something, or things that we've seen over the break that could be useful for.
We could start our own podcast, mate. Call it Two Middle-Aged Bald Blokes with Grey Beards or something like that.
Mate, awesome as always to chat with you. We will chat again very soon. All the best for the holiday season. Thanks again for being on the show.
Thanks for having me, Simon. And ditto on the festive season wishes. Talk again in 2026.
Thanks, mate. See you soon.
Cheers.